it's really feels good to get back and be doing this in person. It's been 3 years, and it's a lot better seeing actual shareholders, owners, partners, and Charlie and I are now combined. If you're around for fractions, the two of us are 190 years old, and I really think you're entitled, if you're the owner of a company, and you've got two guys, 98 and 91, running the company, you're entitled to actually see them in person. I mean,
Thanks, Warren. The first question comes from Jack Sisaleski, and he says in the annual letter that you wrote in February 26, you mentioned that Charlie and you saw little that excites us in the market. Yet around March 10th, the deal for Allegheny was announced, and then later the Occidental announcement, then the disclosure of the HP investment. His question is, what changed from the time you dated the letter to the time the investments were announced? Did the name suddenly become interesting in the space of a month and a half?
No.
Or half a month?
Well, Charlie, you want to give your version? I'll give my version.
Well, my version would be we found some things we prefer to owning to Treasury bills.
Yeah. And as usual, Charlie's given the total answer, but I'll talk longer and say less. What happened was that a few stocks got very interesting to us, and we also spent a lot of money. What happened, the market, and this is really important to understand, in the last couple of years, the stock market is it's always been a combination of a casino and when I talk about Wall Street, I'm talking about the whole capital formation market, and trading market, et cetera. But the market has been extraordinary. Sometimes it's quite investment oriented, kind of like it always you read about in the books and everything. What capital markets are supposed to do, and you study it in school and all that. And other times it's almost totally a casino. Well, we bought in 2 weeks, thereabouts, 14% of Occidental Petroleum. And you'll say, well, how can you buy 14% of a company in 2 weeks? You wouldn't be able to do that with Berkshire. I mean, you can't literally buy it. You can say you want to buy 14% of the company. It's going to take you a long, long time. But overwhelmingly, large companies in America, well, all of them, they became poker chips, and people were buying and selling like 3-day calls or 2-day calls, and the more times people pull the handle on the machine, the more money the machine makes. I mean, it's very clear. And overwhelmingly, I mean, where did people go? The investors just were sitting around, and there weren't very many, and the money was being made essentially by a bunch of people gambling on things, and that enabled us in a 2-week period to buy 14% of a business that's been around for decades. And occasionally Berkshire gets a chance to do something, and it's not because we're smart. It's because the only thing I'd say we qualify on, and sometimes I wonder about that, but I think we're sane. I mean, that's the main requirement in this business.
We get all these suggestions from index funds, a letter saying the chairman and the president of the chief executive officer are the same person, and that they have some professor somewhere that thinks that American business would work better if it had a separate, if Warren could split him in two and have each half work. And to me, it's the most ridiculous criticism I've ever heard. Odysseus would come back from winning the battle in Troy and so forth, and some guy was saying, I don't like the way you were holding your spear when you won that battle. It's some guy that's never run any business and doesn't know anything. I don't think too much of this activity. I would argue that in a lot of the wealth advisory business, people are charging for skill and delivering closet indexization. In other words, nobody can stand being that different from the crowd in results. They're afraid they'll lose their fees, so everybody does the same thing. It's mildly ridiculous. The world is mildly ridiculous.
Yeah. I would say that the future for a long time is about as assured as you can have in the world. We don't have an answer for the nuclear problem or anything, but we have a culture that A, has worked, B, has the shares and the shareholders that will carry it a long way. And the first year, let's say I die tomorrow, the first year, everybody says, what's going to happen? They're going to spend all, they're going to do all these things. You've got the shares held in a place that it can't happen. You've got a board of directors that understands that our culture is 99.9% of running the business. They don't think that having meetings of the committees and bringing in outside experts or anything like that mean a thing. I mean, it's a process that the world has adopted, and they've done it for reasons we understand. But Berkshire is just plain different. We are a business that exists for people that trust us. The big worry, of course, is that somebody comes in and figures they can make billions as a group, or people that sell the businesses and say it's better to be private because, or it's better to be pure this or something like that. Well, we're a pure partnership. Is what we're pure at, and we do have what we think is a special relationship with our owners, and I don't think the relationship changes and the ownership doesn't change that much.
But look what happened to Robin Hood from its peak to its trough. Wasn't that pretty obvious that something like that was going to happen?
Tell me again what it.
Robin Hood, when it came out and it went public and
Oh.
it got lured everybody in all the short-term gambling and big commissions and hidden kickbacks and so on and so on. It was disgusting.
Yeah. And it says so last year, and they got mad at you, and they sold a bunch of their stock, and they got the money, and
Yeah, but now it's unraveling.
Yeah.
God is getting just.
one of the things I bought, it was bought for a different purpose by a different manager months earlier. He bought roughly 15 million shares of Activision, and I never paid. I knew about the company, but I would just see it at the monthly report. But then on January, 17th or 18th, something like that, Microsoft announced they were going to buy Activision for $95 a share. Now, when they announced that, at that point, Activision becomes a different kind of security. They're securities, in this case, a common stock, whose value depends not on what the market price does, but whether a given corporate event occurs, an announced corporate event occurs. Well, Microsoft wants to buy Activision, we'll say. Well, they said at $95 a share. And they've got the money, and obviously mergers and big mergers, tech companies, all kinds of things, have got all kinds of problems. with the world generally in terms of opinion. So you don't know what the Justice Department will do, or you don't know what the EU will do, and all kinds of things. So in order that the news people don't feel that there's no news there, I can tell you that as of yesterday, we own about 9.5%. If we go past 10%, there'll be a foreign file with the SEC and so on. But it is my purchases, not the manager who bought it some months ago. If the deal goes through, we make some money, and if the deal doesn't go through, who knows what happens.
Let's go to this question from Matt Feigl. His question is related to the growth of passive investing through index funds and ETFs. He says, passive investment vehicles now control upwards of 50% of the United States stock market. The actual owners of these passive investment vehicles decided passive investing makes the most sense for them. Yet in doing so, passive investors have empowered the large index funds to become the biggest activists in the market. These passive managers now enjoy enormous, and I would argue undue, influence over corporate governance. Do Warren or Charlie see any benefit or logic to a rule that would prohibit passive investment vehicle managers from voting the shares they control for their passive investment clients?
Well, I'll take that. I think the guy's right. I think the thing is out of control and counterproductive. And I don't think it's good for the country to have 3 passive investors with bright young men from Harvard or what else telling them what proper governance of corporations is. It's not a good development.
Have you changed your views on Bitcoin and or cryptocurrency in any respect?
Well, I shouldn't answer any questions on the subject, but I will. If you told me you owned all of the Bitcoin in the world and you offered it to me for $25, I wouldn't take it, because what would I do with it? I have to sell it back to you one way or another. I mean, maybe I have the same people, but it isn't going to do anything. Basically, assets, to have value, they have to deliver something to somebody, and there's only one currency that's acceptable in the United States. I mean, you can come up with all kinds of things. We can put out Berkshire coins, or we can put up Berkshire money or anything like that. And anybody that thinks the United States is going to change to where they let Berkshire money replace theirs, is out of their mind.
In my life, I try and avoid things that are stupid and evil and make me look bad in comparison with somebody else. And Bitcoin does all 3. And in the first place, it's stupid because it's very likely to go to 0. In the second place, it's evil because it undermines the Federal Reserve System and the national currency system, which we desperately need to maintain its integrity and government control and so on. And third, it makes us look foolish compared to the communist leader in China. He was smart enough to ban Bitcoin in China. And with all of our presumed advantages of civilization, we are a lot dumber than the communist leader in China.
My general sense, and there's no way to prove it, but I essentially believe people are now behaving somewhat more tribal than they have for a long time. And I mean, people are always going to be partisan, and they're going to have religious belief, they're going to have all kinds of things, but it gets pretty tribal. And I want to tell you, I speak from experience because I've been tribal, and we're confessing today. Nebraska football is tribal, but it can get very dangerous when one group of people say 2 + 2 is 5, and another say it's 2 + 2 is 3, and they're going to give you those answers if you call them. Charlie, what tribes are you members of?
Well, in California, we have a legislature which is completely gerrymandered, so nobody can ever be thrown out by the voters. And therefore, the only people in the legislature are insane rightists and insane leftists. And they get together every 10 years, and there's usually 6 moderates somewhere in the legislature. And so they rejigger all the districts to throw them out, because neither party can stand them. Now that is government in California.
Yeah. And you live there and you have to go back?
Yes, yes.
I'm sure you'll have a welcome.
And I prefer living there to living in Russia.